They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that DNA can be thicker than both, especially when it's hiding secrets. My name is Melle Anderson, and for 28 years, I thought being adopted was the biggest surprise of my life. I was wrong. I was adopted at birth by James and Melle Anderson, two of the kindest, most loving people I could have asked for. It was never a secret, I was their daughter, and they were my parents. Being adopted didn't feel like a mark of difference, it was just part of our story, like Dad's incessant dad jokes or Mom's infamous apple pie. It wasn't until Aunt Karen made it an issue that I even began to question who I was. It all started with the Anderson family grand reunion. Grandpa Anderson was turning 90, and the entire extended family was descending on his farmhouse in Vermont for a week of celebrations. Cousins were flying in, uncles and aunts taking time off work, all of them hyped to make it the biggest family event in history, except Karen. As Grandpa's eldest daughter and self-appointed protector of the Anderson legacy, Karen had taken charge of the reunion. And she had very clear ideas about who was considered family. I learned just how clear over dinner one evening at my parents' house. Karen was running through the guest list with Mom, talking logistics like this was a corporate event. Of course, we'll need to finalize numbers, she said, not sparing me a glance. This is a gathering for real Andersons, blood relatives only. The room froze. Dad's fork clinked sharply against his plate. What exactly do you mean by that, Karen? He asked, his voice low. Mom's voice dropped an octave, and I could feel the tension rise. Well, James, Aunt Karen smoothed the front of her blouse like she was in a boardroom, you understand. This is about our heritage, about preserving the Anderson bloodline. Michelle is lovely, of course, but she's not really one of us. Not really one of us. Those words cut through me like a blade. 28 years of shared holidays, laughter, the kind of memories that fill a person's soul, all tossed aside because I didn't share the same blood. But Aunt Karen wasn't done. James, be reasonable, she continued, as if my parents weren't sitting right there. This isn't about feelings. It's about family history. The reunion will feature a presentation on the Anderson genealogy, heirlooms, traits we've inherited. Michelle would feel out of place. I could see Mom's hands clench into fists. The only person making Michelle feel out of place is you. Karen's voice was icy. I've already spoken with the committee. We all agree, only blood relatives. The committee was made up of Karen's daughter, Jessica, and a couple of cousins who never dared challenge her. I used to share secrets and clothes with Jessica. Now, she couldn't even meet my eyes. This is ridiculous. Dad stood up, shaking his head in disbelief. If Michelle isn't welcome, then neither are we. Don't be dramatic, James, Karen sighed, as if this was all beneath her. You're the eldest son. You have responsibilities. And Maria's been helping Grandpa with the photos for the display. You can't let Michelle's feelings ruin the celebration. I cut in, my voice sharp. Then don't worry about it. I wouldn't want to stain the precious Anderson bloodline with my adopted presence. Mom reached for me, but I stood, a rush of heat flooding my face. Go, Michelle, she said softly, but I could hear the sorrow in her voice. Go for Grandpa. He deserves to have his whole family there. His real family, according to Karen. I stormed out, ignoring their calls. The drive home was a blur of anger and hurt. The more I thought about it, the more moments rushed back to me, like that Christmas when Karen gave all the grandkids heirloom jewelry, except me. Or the way she'd always made sure to introduce me as James and Maria's adopted daughter, rather than just my niece. But it wasn't just the hurt that gnawed at me. It was the way Karen had kept emphasizing, blood relatives only. Something about it felt off, like she was hiding something deeper. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept returning to one of the photos Mom had been sorting for Grandpa's birthday, an old, faded Polaroid from a picnic the year before I was adopted. The image of Karen standing slightly apart from the family, her expression unreadable. It bugged me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. The next morning, I called in sick to my job at the architectural firm and drove straight to my parents' house. Mom was at work, but I had a key. The boxes of old photos were still scattered across the dining room table, untouched since yesterday. I found the picnic photo easily enough, summer of 1994. Just 3 months before my birth parents made the choice to give me up to the Andersons. The whole family was there, sprawled out on checkered blankets, paper plates in their laps, looking easy and carefree, everyone except Karen. She was standing at the edge of the frame, one hand pressed flat against her stomach, her face turned away from the camera. She wore a loose sundress, a sharp contrast to her usual tailored clothes, according to the date stamp. This photo had been taken just 6 months before her hasty wedding to Uncle Steve, a ceremony that Mom had always called rushed. An unsettling thought began to creep into my mind. I'd been born in January 1995. Karen had married Steve in December 1994. The timing, it couldn't be, could it? I snapped a photo of the Polaroid with my phone and, in a haze, opened my laptop. Hours passed as I sank deeper into research, my mind buzzing. Hospital records from that time were largely digitized now, and after several frustrating searches, I found what I needed, a birth record from St. Mary's Hospital, dated January 15, 1995, my birth record, my birth mother's name, Jane Doe, standard protocol for closed adoptions, but there was something else, a nurse's note, likely misfiled during digitization. Patient requested complete confidentiality, family connection to hospital board member, Ka noted, K. Karen Anderson. I froze, my fingers trembling. Slowly, I pulled up the website for a major DNA testing service. I had always avoided these tests out of respect for my birth parents' privacy, but now, it felt like a matter of unraveling the truth. 2 days later, the kit arrived. I swabbed my cheek, the cold sensation grounding me. Karen's words echoed in my mind, blood relatives only. All those years of her subtle distance, the quiet way she had made me feel like an outsider, how she had never once asked me if I wanted to find my birth parents, even though most of the other relatives had. It was all starting to feel like more than just coincidence. 6 weeks later, the notification pinged on my phone. Your DNA results are ready. And that's when everything I thought I knew about family began to unravel. The results loaded slowly, each section revealing a piece of a puzzle that felt impossible to solve. The first to appear was the ethnic breakdown, predominantly Northern European, just like the Andersons. Then came the health markers, showing the same predisposition to high blood pressure that ran through the family, but it was the relative matches that nearly stopped my heart. Close family match, Jessica Anderson, first cousin, estimated relationship, half-sibling. And beneath that, close family match, James Anderson, uncle, estimated relationship, father. My mind reeled. My father wasn't my uncle, he was my biological father, which meant Karen was my mother. The room spun around me. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and dialed Mom. Not my adoptive mom, my real mom, the one who had always mattered to me. Michelle, she answered immediately. What's wrong? I need you and Dad to come over right now, and bring the photo album from 1994. 20 minutes later, they arrived. I didn't speak as they walked into the apartment, only gestured to the laptop still open in front of me. Without a word, I turned it toward them. Oh, God, Mom whispered, her voice trembling. She sank onto the couch, her hands gripping the armrest. Dad went pale, his eyes wide with shock. How long have you known? I asked, my voice hollow. We didn't, Dad said quickly, shaking his head. Not for sure, we suspected, but Karen never confirmed it. Mom took my hand, her grip tight, as though anchoring herself. When we were chosen for the adoption, the social worker told us it was a closed adoption, but, she hinted there was some kind of family connection. We thought maybe a distant relative. Then, at the hospital, I saw Karen in the maternity ward. She said she was just visiting a friend, but she begged us not to tell anyone. She said it would ruin her life, ruin her chances with Steve. We agreed to keep it quiet, because we wanted you so badly, and we were afraid, if we didn't, she'd change her mind. I finished the thought for her. The pieces were falling into place. Karen's distance, her insistence on keeping me apart from family events, her obsession with bloodlines, heritage. We should have told you sooner, Mom said, her voice cracking. Tears welled in her eyes, but over time, it seemed kinder not to. You were ours, completely ours. The how didn't matter. I hugged them both then, these parents who had chosen me, loved me, and protected me, even from the painful truth. Does Grandpa know? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad shook his head slowly. I don't think so. Karen told everyone she was staying with a cousin in Maine during that time. I glanced over at the reunion invitation sitting on the coffee table, the bold lettering standing out like an accusation. The Anderson family grand reunion. The Anderson family grand reunion was in 3 days, and I knew it would be the turning point for everything. Karen's meticulously planned celebration of Anderson heritage was about to take a sharp, unexpected turn. "I'm going," I declared, cutting off Mom's protests before she could speak. "Michelle," Mom began, concern etched in her voice. "No, I'm tired of hiding who I am, of letting Karen make me feel less than. If she wants to celebrate Anderson blood, fine, let's do it." The reunion was already in full swing when we arrived at Grandpa's farm. Cars were lined up along the driveway, kids ran freely across the lawn, and the scent of sizzling barbecue wafted through the air. A large banner, perfectly done in Karen's calligraphy, read, "Welcome Anderson family." The moment she spotted us, her smile faltered, her expression darkened. "I thought we discussed this," Karen said, stepping forward to block our path. "This is for blood relatives only." I met her gaze squarely. "Funny you should mention that, Aunt Karen, or should I say, Mom?" The glass in her hand shattered on the porch steps. Conversation stopped, heads turned. "What did you just say?" Her voice was barely audible. I pulled out my phone and opened the DNA results. "Would you like to see the proof? The test shows everything, genetic markers, family connections. It's amazing what science can tell us about family these days." "You had no right," she hissed, her face contorted with fury. "That information was private." "Private?" I laughed, bitter, "like how you spent my entire life treating me like a secret, making me feel like I didn't belong in my own family." "Keep your voice down," Karen snapped, her eyes darting around, desperate. "This isn't what the reunion is supposed to be about, celebrating Anderson history, family heritage. Here's a piece of history for everyone," I said, my voice growing louder. 28 years ago, Karen Anderson had a baby. Instead of acknowledging her child, she gave her up for adoption. But here's the twist, she arranged for her own brother to adopt me, and then spent the next 3 decades pretending I was just some stranger. The porch was completely silent. Jessica stood frozen halfway down the steps, her face a blank mask of shock. "Is this true?" Her voice trembled, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of concern for me in her eyes. The question came from Grandpa, who had wheeled himself onto the porch to witness the scene. "Karen, is she yours?" Karen's composure shattered in an instant. "Daddy, I was young, unmarried, it would have ruined everything with Steve." "So you gave your baby to James and Maria?" Grandpa's voice was quiet but steady. "And then spent years making that same child feel unwelcome in her own family?" "I did what I had to do," Karen cried, her face flushed with frustration. "I gave her a good home, responsible parents. What more was I supposed to do?" "Love her," Jessica said, her voice a quiet accusation. All eyes turned to my half-sister. "You were supposed to love her, Mom, like you love me. Instead, you made me treat my own sister like an outsider." The next few hours were chaos. Family members picked sides, old arguments resurfaced, and long-held secrets spilled out like water from a dam. Uncle Steve stormed off, shouting about decades of lies. Cousins who had once followed Karen's lead in excluding me now looked ashamed, their heads bowed. But something else happened too. Jessica hugged me, truly hugged me, for the first time in years. "I always wanted a sister," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Grandpa insisted on hearing everything about my life. As he listened, he proudly declared that my architectural talent must have come from his side of the family. Karen left early, muttering something about a spectacle, and refusing to participate any longer. As she stormed off, it felt like a heavy weight was lifted from my shoulders. For the first time, I could just be an Anderson, no explanations, no qualifiers needed. Later that evening, as fireflies danced over the lawn, Grandpa called everyone together. "Family," he began, his voice strong despite his age, "isn't about keeping secrets. It's not about blood, or DNA, or who's allowed to belong. Family is about love, messy, complicated, sometimes painful love." His gaze shifted to me. "Michelle, you've been an Anderson since the day James and Maria brought you home, not because of whose blood you carry, but because of the love you've both given and received. I'm sorry it took us this long to say it properly. 1 year has passed since that reunion. Karen still refuses to speak to me, and honestly, I've made peace with that. Jessica and I meet for coffee every week now. trying to make up for lost time. She's pregnant, looks like I'm going to be an aunt. Mom and Dad are still my rock. Finding out they're actually my biological aunt and uncle hasn't changed anything between us. If anything, it's made our bond stronger, built on trust and honesty. Last week, I found a package waiting for me on my doorstep. Inside was an old jewelry box and a note in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. This belonged to your grandmother. She would have wanted her granddaughter to have it, not because of blood, but because of the heart you've shown in forgiving this family's mistakes. Love, Grandpa. Inside the box was the necklace Karen had pointedly never given me all those Christmases ago. Now it sits in my jewelry box, not as a symbol of bloodlines or heritage, but as a reminder that family is what we make it. Sometimes the truth hurts, sometimes it heals, and sometimes, like a DNA test that reveals both roots and wings, it sets us free to become who we were always meant to be, not just blood relatives, but true family.